Welcome to the Heads Up Podcast. Today, I get to grill someone I've known in poker for a long time named Juha. He is the head of game integrity at Party Poker. So what we did is we asked my community and my brother Matt's community any questions you may have about game integrity. We collected them all. There's about 150, boiled them down to the essential questions, and today I get to grill Juha. So welcome to the podcast, Juha. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you for having me. And really big thank you to your community for all the questions that came through. They were really close to my heart, and I'm really looking forward and excited to answer as many as we can today.
Awesome. So I'd love to start with maybe some of your origin stories. How did you get into your spot of working as the head of game integrity at Party Poker?
Sure. So I used to play poker professionally, cash games, for about 10 years. And I've been playing poker overall since 2004, so 20 years now. So if we go back for about a decade now, so in 2014, I was playing, obviously playing online poker for a living, and I was speaking with other serious poker players as well. And we started seeing these kind of suspicious looking accounts at the table. And there were a lot of accounts, playing very similarly to each other. And we started talking in this small group of players, like, is there something going on here? And we then gathered some information together and we sent it to the big three poker sites at the time. And eventually we noticed that, those players were removed from the games. So we assumed that, they were cheating in some way and they were banned for that reason. So if we then fast forward a year or two later, I started to getting in talks with Party and started talking, doing this professionally. And there was a role open in the company, so I applied to it. And in 2017, I joined the company and started to catch cheaters professionally. Eventually, I was asked by Party to lead the team that is now today leading all the efforts to catch cheaters in all the poker networks that we manage.
Awesome. Okay. And can you talk a little bit about that team, some of their expertise, and maybe their areas that they work on?
Sure. So, there's several ex poker professionals in the team, like myself, from different game types. I played cash games, and then also we have other game types that we have to cover. So we have some ex professionals covering all those game types. Obviously, we need to be supported by other skill sets or people with other skill sets, such as programmers, data analysts, product managers, and so on. So, for example, some of the questions that came from your community, some of them are directly handled by my team, and many of them actually are covered by other teams. So, with game integrity topics, there's directly or indirectly, there's dozens of people working on these topics.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into the big one. I just played some live poker this weekend, and when you talk about online poker with people that typically just play at the casino, you'll commonly hear like, "Oh, I don't play. I'm not sure if I'm playing against real people." And this is a common sentiment that's held by the general population. But it's increasingly a concern for the players that understand the online ecosystem as well. Talking about bots here. So can you talk about what's the process at Party Poker for ensuring that players such as myself are playing against real people that have a pulse and are sentient as opposed to robots?
First, let's take a step back and define what a bot is, right? So for there might be some less experienced poker players listening. So poker, as we know, it's a one-person game where you should be using your own brain to decide what you're gonna do, right? So when it kind of crosses the line of being a bot in the definition that we have, it's when you have something or someone else is actually deciding what action to take. So that is the kind of one way to define what the bot is. So how do we catch people who might be using bots? So I'm gonna name a few kind of like the basic ways to highlight them. So we could be looking at players who play a lot. They might be winning a lot. They might be playing very close to GTO. Or when it comes to like big bot groups, we might be looking at players who are playing statistically very close to each other. So these are some of the basic ways to highlight potential bot suspects, but we have to kind of find a good balance between having something to talk about, um, so we can have a conversation here, versus me revealing too much, because if we really reveal too much, then that might help some of these cheaters to evade our controls longer. So yeah.
That makes sense. I understand. Obviously, I want all the juicy info, but I get it. Can we talk about RTA as well? This stands for real time assistance. Essentially, people are able to look up answers that they might have done before the hand, before they played, or even in real time asking poker calculators questions that they can find answers to. This would obviously be very useful, and it might be difficult to determine whether someone is just a really sharp poker player or whether they're accessing this information. So, how do you go about finding these players we sort of already talked about, but investigating players if you suspect them of using RTA or are suspect them of being a poker bot?
Sure. So I mean, it's a good point. Like, how do you differentiate between somebody just being a very good player or somebody using some kind of assistance tool to cheat? So we have a few ways to actually investigate cases like this. So we could, for example, ask the player to record a video for us, or we could ask them to live stream for us. We've even, in some cases, we've asked a player to come to our offices to play in front of us for a week. And in the most extreme case, we actually sent two of our guys to a player's house for a week, so that one of them was with him uh, every time that he was playing. And we do this, either the videos or the streaming or these office visits, to get a big enough sample size in what we call like a controlled environment, so that we can then analyze the hands played in that controlled environment and compare that gameplay to historical gameplay from the account to see if the level of play is the same. I think the technology that players use to cheat, it will get better over time. That's clear. But for us, it doesn't really matter how the players are cheating, because if we are able to get this sample size, big sample size of hand histories to analyze from a control environment, whether it's this video recording, streaming, the player coming to the office, or us going to the player, there's just no way the player can pass that type of investigation, playing without whatever assistance they were using at the time. And that makes me more comfortable about the future of poker. I know a lot of players, they're worried that, the solvers and all these are getting better and better. But I think if more poker sites applied the type of investigative methods that we have, I think more players would be more comfortable about the future of poker, and that more operators can keep providing fair and safe games.
So I want to ask you about probably the most controversial question today, because it's something we do differently at Party Poker, and that is hand histories. So there was a recent discussion in the world of poker where a bunch of players came together, shared hand histories of a player, and discovered someone winning at a win rate that was theoretically almost impossible. Right? So they highlighted a cheater through these hand histories, got them banned from the site, and everyone became aware that there were some vulnerabilities in this particular site. People don't have the opportunity to do that at Party Poker because we allow people to download their own hand histories, but it doesn't share the other players they're playing against. So could you give sort of some justification or your thoughts on why Party Poker does this and how you think about it?
Sure. So the decision to remove the opponent's screen names from the hand histories, it was taken about 5 years ago, and that was actually taken to protect the players. So before, when all the opponent's screen names were in the hand histories, some players were, importing these hand histories in their tracking tools. They were forming profiles on their opponents and exploiting them that way. And in some cases, they were even data mining new hand histories for them that allowed them to have profiles on some players that they had not even played against before.
So pushing back a little bit on this idea, in the past you were the community that was finding these cheats, right? And you would use the hand histories and submit it to the poker sites, and it had a good outcome. So why should it be different now at Party Poker? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a fair point, Jamie. Obviously, we acknowledge that players cannot do this type of analysis um, on the opponents that they see at the tables anymore on party after we remove the screen names of the opponents. But we don't feel it should be the players' responsibility anyway. As we've covered, we used to be the players, we used to be those community players that, when we were playing poker professionally, we used to do it ourselves. We used to gather anything that we found suspicious at the tables and sending it to the poker sites to investigate. On our side, we feel that it's actually one of those most basic things that every poker operator should have covered. And personally, I wouldn't even be opposed to actually telling all these operators how exactly to do statistical analysis to highlight potential poker bot rings, because I don't think we should be competitors in this area. We're all in this together. The players, the other poker sites and party, we're all in this together to kind of future-proof poker and keep the cheaters out.
Okay. And how about collusion? Because I think collusion is an area where it's really easy to see when you have hand histories. This is commonly what we see discussed on Twitter or in forums. When you have a hand history where someone does something very bizarre against another opponent, it's easy to see in a hand history, and without it, it's not. So, what's your process for collusion in house at Party Poker, and how do you have us covered? I guess.
Right. So I mean, on Party we have a this in-house tool where all the hand histories that are played in the networks, they get fed into this tool, and it automatically analyzes them, and it spits out alerts for us to review. And this is done 24/7 on all the networks and covers every hand. So this is some of the ways that we highlight collusion. We combine the the statistics and the information from the hand histories with some of the non-gameplay information that we have that other players might not have. So the community that does the investigations, they would only have kind of the hand histories and the statistical information to use. We have so much more information in our disposal when we try to highlight and investigate, well, collusion in this case. When it comes to collusion, the team that manages the collusion cases is the team is led by someone who used to play six max turbo SNGs for a living, and he might be the player who has played them actually most in the world. So he has a lot of experience in this area with SNGs, which we know is one of the most vulnerable game types when it comes to collusion. So I also know that Nick, who does this job, he when he was playing poker professionally, he used to highlight collusion to the operators. He noticed that the site wasn't doing its job, so he was doing the same thing as I was doing for the cash game bots. He was doing it for this SNG collusion, and he also later found out that some of these, or well, he noticed while he was playing that many of the players that he reported were eventually banned. And that's just one example of an area where we have specific expertise.
I want to ask you probably the most common question that people have about poker broadly that don't play poker. This is an endless debate. You've seen it on forums if you've played the game at all. And that is, are the games truly random? Is the RNG random? How's the deck shuffled? Are the poker sites rigging it against me? Are they juicing pots? Everyone's seen this discussion, especially from brand new poker players. So I'd love for you to touch on this and explain how the RNG works, the deck shuffle, and are games truly random and fair?
So let's get the easiest one out of the way first, which is how does the shuffle work? So on party, the deck is shuffled before the hand is dealt, and there's no further shuffling that happens during the hand. So that's that one covered. When it comes to rigging the games, quote unquote, there's no incentive for us to do so. We charge rake from cash game hands that reads the flop, and obviously there's the tournament fee as part of the tournament buy-in. So regardless of who wins the pots in cash games or wins the tournaments, we make the same amount of money. So for us, it doesn't matter who wins or loses. When it comes to the random number generator, we actually have those numbers audited by a third-party company monthly, and this information is actually visible. It's published on our website, so anyone can check those reports at any time, and we can probably add a link to a description somewhere for players to quickly check those out. Um, Entain is PartyPoker's parent company. Their Entain strategy is to only operate on regulated markets or markets where there's an there's a path to regulation in the near future. So this is not my area, but I believe it would be against these regulations. It might even be illegal to adjust the shuffling in any way, and it most likely will get us in trouble. So, all this together, I believe there's just no incentive for us to be doing anything else except just running a very fair game for everyone.
So you mentioned a web page there, and I kind of want to draw attention back to it because my next question was about player reports. Right? People see something they see that's suspicious. They want to report that they think something is up, so that you and your team can investigate it. I know from previous discussions that you guys really welcome this feedback from people, and I think it's a similar area on the website as those audit reports. So, player reporting. How do people go about doing it? Get a hold of you so that they can let you know.
Sure. So, I mean, as we've covered already, we used to be those players who, we took our time and it took a lot of effort to put together these reports that we send as players to the operators. So I understand firsthand how valuable that time and is for the players to take, and how valuable that information that is shared to the poker networks is. So we welcome player reports very greatly. So how players can report anything that they might deem suspicious, there's various ways. So first, you could go to what we call our Safer Poker page, which contains all the game integrity related rules. And if you scroll towards the bottom of that page, there is a form that you can use to report anything you deemed suspicious to us, and you can do so anonymously from that form. You can also email us. Our email address is gameintegrity@partypoker.com, and that email will reach the team directly. Obviously, in all these cases, the more information you share with us, the easier it will be for us to look into it. And one of the key things that we do is we always ensure that when a player has reported something, we reply back first just to acknowledge we've received the report, and then later, once the investigation is concluded, we will let the reporting player know what action we took in the end and why. Even if we didn't take any action, we will still let the player know the outcome.
So I want to finish today with two sort of more future-looking, open-ended questions through most of the grilling. The first one is about the future of online poker. There's always a bit of existential threat, at least to me, in terms of what is the future going to look like for professional players like me or enthusiasts of the game. Because there's new intelligence, right? There's AI, there's new tools that are coming out. We're continuing to understand the game better. So, how do you think about future proofing game integrity at Party Poker so that games remain safe and fair into the future?
I think it's important to acknowledge that, the technology, as you mentioned, is going to advance. It has advanced a lot, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. We look at some of the tools that poker players are using today. They're so different. They're so much better. They help you so much in your gameplay compared to 5 to 10 years ago. So, and we know that these will only get better and better. So, what poker sites need to be doing is keep up with the investment in game integrity, keep up investing in the expertise and in the tools, so that we can keep up with whatever cheating technology is out there for players to take advantage of. Yeah, I think that's one of the key things for me personally that I feel is important for party and other poker operators to keep up with.
And the last question is a bit of a fun one, fantastical maybe. You've been working in game integrity for a long time, in poker for 20 years, game integrity, with Party Poker and before, probably about 8 years or so. Um, so you understand a lot about this area. What's something that's in your brain, your understanding of this space that you wish you could beam out to the rest of the industry, to players, so that they could understand it? If that was a possibility, what would that thing be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess um, I would like players to know that, first of all, that there's a team here who are players such as themselves who care very deeply about the fairness of the games, and they get up every morning to work on this area and ensuring that the games are free of cheaters. I think that's one of the main points I'd like to make. Also, think it would be really interesting for the players if we could somehow just for 1 minute to show all the tools and investigative methods and processes that we have built to catch cheaters. I think it would um, I think it would win a lot of confidence from the players if we could do that. Obviously, we can't, because if we revealed all this, obviously it would be saved somewhere, and then the players or the people who want to be cheating, they would take advantage, and it would be so much harder for us to catch them in the future. Um, but I do want to tell our players that when they contact us, they should know that there's a team here who care very deeply about the game. They are ex-professionals, like the players themselves, and they know that when they report something, there's a team that takes it very seriously and has the expertise to investigate it very thoroughly.
Awesome. Juha, thank you so much for the time today. It was intense, man. I enjoyed grilling you with all of these questions, and taking you out of the office into a recording studio. But it was a lot of fun, and I think hopefully people will learn some stuff here. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jamie. And I would like to tell your community also that, if this conversation triggered any, follow up questions, I would be really happy to do a follow up with you, in a later date and, go through and answer again, specifically those thoughts that came out based on this podcast.
Amazing. Let's do that. I plan on it, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.